have grown exponentially like this. And again, these are all really positive things. They have consequences with them, and that's part of what makes life complicated sometimes. Sometimes really great things also have negatives that go with them or consequences. So the first real big jump was agriculture. Our ability, our ancestors were pretty much tribal until the first cities formed, and the first cities that formed are believed to have formed around agriculture. Maybe the very first small ones were around trading things, so you'd bring your animals, some would bring food, some would bring arrows or whatever, and they would trade. But for the cities to really get large, which basically was in like Iraq, or the first real cities, was agriculture and the ability to grow massive amounts of food. And that goes back not that long, 5,000 years ago, something like that. Sounds like a long time. But when we look at the history of the planet and evolution, it's actually not very long ago. So now we can make large amounts of food, so more people are surviving. And then the real big jump in modern times is because of medical purposes, and in particular the discovery of antibiotics and vaccines. That really changed everything. So because that wasn't until the late 1800s, and that's really when things took off. I'm pretty sure late 1800s, maybe early 1900s. So maybe within the last 100 to 150 years, we've discovered and created vaccines and antibiotics that are keeping us surviving diseases that used to kill people, like pneumonia. And this is usually when I ask a question like, how many of you have had pneumonia? And people raise their hand. And I've had it probably 2 or 3 times. It's very painful breathing lung disease, and that killed lots of people. But now you can take some pills and antibiotics and get rid of it. And so earlier we talked about diseases being a major limiting factor, but when we eliminate and conquer these diseases, we now eliminate that limiting factor, which results in a lot of population growth. So again, that's really great, but it also has resulted in the population getting really large in a very short amount of time. Those two are the main ones. Then also, like, our ability, even like the ancient Greeks and Romans and stuff had sanitation and waste removal, and just getting rid of the nasty stuff so you can be healthier, basically. And that's just better healthcare, better wellness, not getting sick from the nasty stuff around us. Our ability to harness and use energy is really important. Big part of the Industrial Revolution was basically burning coal, which is a fossil fuel, coal and oils and things like that. But those create a lot of air pollution, which we've talked about and we'll talk about more. But just being able to use that energy to help us survive and all this new technology that comes with it has been really critical for the modern humans that we are. Over here we have some giant windmills. You can see there's a car down here, so they're really big. And just a reminder again, the fastest growing industry, at least recently, has been windmill technicians and mechanics and stuff like that. So if you're thinking of trying to find a job in clean energy and renewable energy, wind energy would be a great option. And then over here we have nuclear power plants, which can create huge amounts of energy from a small amount of resources, but it does create toxic waste, and they can have meltdowns. If you've heard of Chernobyl in Russia, that was a huge problem. There's also been problems at a nuclear facility in Japan. I think there was a tsunami, and the tsunami hit the reactors, and it caused a lot of problems. And so those ones, huge amounts of energy from these power plants, but a lot of risks with the radiation and stuff. And then we're going to use that energy in our technology, and these are things that a lot of kids and people and adults take for granted. So really think about this. This is always something I emphasize in class. So obviously we have transportation technology, and unless you live near a farm, all your food and all your water, depending where you live, is coming from somewhere else. So if we don't have the ability to ship food, then cities like LA, New York, all the big cities, they couldn't even exist because so much of those resources are being shipped in. And a lot of people don't realize that. And especially kids. Also, medical technology obviously is really helping us survive. Not just ambulances, but all the different devices. You're hearing a lot about respirators now, and devices that help people stay alive if they're suffering from COVID-19, and a lot of defibrillators, which are those things they use to shock you if you've had, if you're dying and your heart's shutting down, they can shock you back to life. I mean, there's a lot of really advanced stuff as far as technology. And then this is one that I've even talked to some of my adult friends and got in their heads and they'll just be like, dude, you're totally right. refrigerators, we take them for granted. I was raised with a refrigerator too. Like I don't know a world without refrigerators. But if you've got great grandparents, or depending, maybe not your grandparents, they're probably around the age of my mom. She probably had a refrigerator her whole life. But people didn't have refrigerators until electricity was able to be harnessed, and then even then they still had to create them and sell them on a major scale. So we have these things that preserve our food for long periods of time without them going rotten, especially like milk, right? Or this chicken in here, whatever. And these things would go bad and rot, and we couldn't keep food for long periods of time. And this is actually a really important part of our ability to survive and do so well as modern humans. And there are places in the world where they don't have these because they can't afford them, or it's just a more primitive environment. And it is a critical part of the modern, more advanced humans like us and our survival. And the same in the stores. The stores are refrigerating food for long periods of time so that we can buy it. So just something to think about. Every once in a while, it's important to think about things that we have, that we take for granted, and that we should be grateful for. And even something as simple as a refrigerator would be one of those. Or even soap. Cleansing technology, right? With the virus that we're dealing with right now, there's all this stuff about washing your hands, cleaning off stuff when you get it from the store, stuff like that. That's a form of chemical technology that's helping us stay safe from this virus. So really simple stuff can be very important, and a lot of people just totally don't think about that. And I think it's important to remember how lucky we are to have some of these things helping us survive. But unfortunately, and just so you know, this was in the very first textbook I ever used was in 2000. And I was teaching up near where I grew up, near Oakland. And that was the first high school I worked at. And the very first textbook I had 20 years ago said the exact information that's on this slide. So this isn't new information. This isn't my opinion. This is documented in your science textbooks and is out there. This growth that humanity has gone through, unfortunately, is considered the biggest risk to life on Earth, meaning the biodiversity, all the different types of life on Earth, and just the overall health of the biosphere, which includes non-living things like the air and the water that we need to survive. And these are kind of the four really big ones for me, and they tie into other things, but the big ones for me are global warming, which we're gonna get into all of these next week. Actually, I don't know if I get into overfishing, but I may actually add it this year to the slides because it's really important. So global warming, that ties into air pollution as well as the destruction of forests. So these two link to global warming. Global warming is causing climate changes. I've talked about it before. It's causing the oceans to warm. It's causing the air to warm. It's causing the earth to warm. And life on Earth is not used to those temperature increases, and some organisms like algae, which make half the oxygen on Earth, have evolved to not survive in higher temperatures. So even a small degree of increase can kill the algae in the water, which would result in food webs and food chains breaking down as well, and a lot of animal life not being able to survive, as well as oxygen production on the planet going down. And that, to me, is actually the biggest threat of global warming of all, and I mentioned that in another slideshow that you should have watched by now. Deforestation, you guys know this is a big one to me. This is directly related to what's going on with the orangutans. It also is reducing the ability to absorb carbon dioxide, which would help with global warming. And it's also reducing oxygen production, which we're going to need. And moving forward, less plants and less algae means less oxygen production. This is just how it works. A lot of different forms of pollution, which I'll be getting into next week or in the next set of notes. And overfishing, to me, is a really big one. We're wiping out fish in the oceans using all sorts of advanced fishing techniques and giant nets that they drag through the ocean. And we are wiping out species of fish that we eat regularly. Tuna and famous fish that we eat are being wiped out, as well as shark species and other things all over the planet. And so these, to me, are kind of the big four, but there's obviously other stuff as well. And this picture just shows that it's a numbers issue, that a certain number of people on the planet causes more stress and strain on the biosphere to support us. Okay, so I want to check how long this video is getting, and I don't think I can unless I stop it. So I think I'm going to stop it here, and then I'll just do the last little topic, which will be like a short video on this stuff, on age structure diagrams.